She didn't whisper, she said it loud enough to ride the microphones.
He's maintenance. Sweet. But not our brand.
In that instant, my daughter turned a lifetime of quiet work into a public stain, and a room full of donors froze harder than concrete on a cold pour. You'll hear how a father chose truth over optics, how a clause in a trust cut through the gloss, and how respect, once cracked, only cures with time, not spin. This isn't a story about money, it's about the price of dignity, paid in full under bright lights. Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're watching from. And as you watch, don't just sit back, be part of the experience. If a moment grabs your attention, whether it's powerful, unexpected, or deeply moving, drop a comment with the timestamp of that scene and share your thoughts. Your reactions bring the story to life, and we love seeing which moments resonate with you the most. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now grab a coffee or tea, settle in, and let's begin. I wake at 5 without an alarm, the old habit arriving before the light. The house holds its breath between night and morning, drywall clicking as it cools, the bay beyond my windows a broad gray slate waiting for the first knife of sun. I grind coffee and set the kettle, then spread the hydraulic plan set across the kitchen table the way other men open the morning paper. Numbers steady me. Arrowed notes about scour depth, tide ranges, cure times. These are the grammar I trust. When the kettle sighs, I pour slow and listen to the slosh, already thinking about today's pour at the seawall 2 miles south, where last month's storm chewed a crescent into the neighborhood shore. My uniform is as predictable as the tide. Flannel over a faded tee, canvas pants with stitches like small scars, and boots that remember every job I've asked them to carry me through. Their leather holds the honest smell of salt and concrete, a combination that the fancy stores will never bottle. Outside, the pre-dawn air tastes like iron filings and mangrove. I step onto the small patio and locate the faint push-pull of water against pilings. If wind writes in cursive, this morning's script is neat and restrained. A good day to pour. 2.5 decades ago, I pointed an old truck south and didn't stop until winter lost its bite. Boston had taught me about grit. Florida taught me about water. I started with patchwork, hairline cracks in dock planks, missing cleats, the occasional split pile. A screwdriver, a pry bar, a rented mixer, and stubbornness were my founding investors. Atlas Marine and Civil looked ridiculous on the first invoice, but names have to be larger than days if they want to pull you forward. The work grew as storms did. Now we specialize in what weather keeps threatening to take, the edges of a place, the lines where land negotiates with the sea. The kitchen holds quiet witness to a different life. My wife's teacup still sits high on a shelf, coated with a polite layer of dust I keep meaning to wipe. Her scarf hangs on the back of a chair as if she might burst through the door and loop it around her neck before asking about lunch. Grief did not arrive as a single wave that knocked me down. It came as small absences, scattered like pebbles underfoot, each one nudging the ankle until I taught myself to step around them. Atlas found work. I found motion. Motion kept the rest from swallowing me. Ava grew in that motion, and for a while we were a 2-person harbor. She was always sharp, the kind of girl who learned your tells before you knew you had any. Chicago took her for college. Palm trees took her next. She builds stories for brands now, angles, captions, rooms where the lighting understands the human face. She lives in a West Palm penthouse whose windows look toward blue water and camera-ready sunsets. She joined the Sailfish and Palm Society and learned the password of linen and laughter. I've been to a few of those rooms, invited as a good father is invited, and I've tried to be viewer more than subject. The faces there are trained not to flinch at work-worn hands. Eyes have a way of rounding off surprise, like sea glass after enough tumbling. A server once handed me champagne with 2 fingers and a soft, "Sir," and I saw my reflection curve in the flute's imperfect surface, a compact man with shoulders more useful than stylish. I do not begrudge their rituals. Rituals are how people fend off chaos, but I will never be one of their rituals. Last year, money changed the air. The rumor mill announced 33 million like a lottery drawing. The paperwork, as far as I understand, says just under 30. The number barely matters, though the world pretends it's the headline. Context changes when a figure crosses some invisible threshold. Doors swing wider, voices lower a register. People become careful with adjectives. I adjusted the only way I know, by doing my work and leaving the rest alone. The bay doesn't bend for rumor. Ava's schedule grew full of openings, launches, fundraisers. She learned to say more by saying less. When I showed up at one of her things in the jacket that still smells like cedar from the closet, she pinched my elbow afterward and told me gently that my trade was hard to explain to polite people. The words didn't cut clean. They burrowed, the way water finds a seam. I nodded because a man can be both hurt and fair. She wasn't born into these rooms. She's learning how to stay inside them. We all study something. On most mornings, I drive the 2015 Chevy Silverado that's still stubborn enough to feel like mine. The dash rattles when the AC kicks into its higher gear. Between job sites, I keep the radio off and let memory edit itself. Sometimes it offers Boston snowfall and the sound it makes when it decides to stop. Sometimes it chooses the night Ava was 3 and fell asleep with a plastic hammer in her fist, her breath making the smallest dents in the quiet. I arrange these reels the way I arrange rebar, parallel, spaced, tied off, ready to bear. Atlas has grown, but not beyond my hands. We've learned the signatures of different storms, the moods of different tides. A seawall is not defiance, it's a conversation. You pour character in lifts, let each one cure, and refuse to rush because impatience is as dangerous as any wave. After a storm, homeowners ask me if we can build something that keeps the ocean out forever. I tell them the truth. The ocean is not an enemy. It's a neighbor with moods, and you live longer if you learn the etiquette. Inside the house, the light has finally climbed onto the table's far edge. I roll the plan set and rubber band it. My phone buzzes with site photos from the foreman. Piles plumb, forms set, crew waiting on the first truck. I lace my boots, not as armor against the day, but as consent to it. The mirror by the door shows me a man who has not changed all that much in 30 years, except in the ways that matter to strangers. Ready, I tell the empty room, and my voice sounds like the low note the bay sometimes finds when the wind comes from the east. I lock up, carry the day out to the truck, and ease onto the causeway. On the right, the water shimmers like tin. On the left, mangroves squat and keep their counsel. Ahead of me, a job, a crew, a wall to pour in weather that for once wants to help. If there is a tremor under all this steadiness, I accept it. A father knows when the tide is about to turn, even if no calendar predicts it. Soon enough, a request will arrive dressed as courtesy. Soon enough, a room will ask me to trade what is true for what is smooth. For now, the road lifts gently, the truck hums, and the day begins the only way I trust, one measured line at a time. The Flagler room trains sunlight the way a maitre d' trains a crowd, quietly, by posture. Light moves through glass, settles on linen, refuses to glare. Chairs in patient cream line up as if they've been told a story about order. I arrive on time and feel the air lower its voice. Ava has a window table so the bay can posture in the background. She stands with practiced ease, the kind learned by repeating a trick until it lives in the bones. Menus stay closed. She places a small, heavy card on the linen and slides it toward me. The embossing snags my thumb. Caroline Voss, image architect for legacy families. Every letter means to flatter the eye before the ear can object. I leave the card beside my water where it behaves like a polite guest, visible, silent, slightly demanding. We order quickly. The room edits its consonants. In the doorway, a tall man in linen enters with a woman whose coral pin looks like a minor victory. I recognize the profile of money even when it isn't trying. Ava's gaze follows, then returns to me with lighthouse attentiveness. She begins in the voice reserved for delicate logistics. For next week, say, coastal project consultant. It keeps things simple. The words drop like pebbles, measured ripples. She wants me present and frailest like a well-ironed edge. She also wants the room to eat without tasting grit. I answer without raising volume. I set piles, forms, pours, and weather. I can wear a white shirt and arrive early. I will not sand my work into a brochure. If the room needs a smoother story, the room can tell it. Walls must bear load later, lies crack under weight. The waiter refills our glasses with monkish care. Ava presents the rest of her plan. I booked 30 minutes with Ms. Voss, wardrobe, phrases that pivot, what reassures. Then, softer, it's not untrue. Just easier for the room, I picture the card like a shim under a wobbly table. Useful briefly, not meant to live there. We move to logistics. The engagement announcement will be at the Palm Beach Yacht Hall early evening if weather keeps its promise. 200 guests, some board members, some donors, a couple of local outlets. I map currents, entry bottlenecks, terrace eddies, the riptide near the bar where small misstatements become public record. Her face softens, describing flowers and lighting, hardens listing names. The click of that change feels like formwork under stress. Plates arrive. Her salad arranges itself like a careful graph. My fish wears a pale sauce with confident balance. We eat in a way that respects the other person's interior weather. When she lowers her voice on the word construction, I pretend not to hear. Politeness, too, can abrade. I think about seawalls and the honesty they require. You pour in lifts, let them cure, test what you've claimed. Image, like water, will find any seam. A cloud shifts and the room replants its light. For a moment, our table is dim and the bay bright, then the reverse. Appearances are currents, not foundations. I'll attend, I say. White shirt, clean boots. She nods, relieved by half measures. And consultant, she adds, like a button I've missed. I let the word sit. It doesn't belong to me. The check slides in with the hush money buys. I put Caroline's card in my wallet and feel the ridges bite leather. Outside, heat flattens the lot into a glare. Chrome throws a shout of sun at my eyes. In the truck, I hold the wheel and breathe through the first sting of disappointment, not at my daughter, but at the smallness rooms can demand. The card perches on the dash like a proctor. It won't help me drive. It may help me remember where not to go. Traffic is light along the causeway. On my right, the bay rehearses calm. On my left, mangroves mind their business. I think about what a wall is for, not to deny water, not to win. To take load honestly, to channel force, to last without pretending eternity. A father can try the same spec. Show up, keep plumb, refuse the lie that smooth is stronger than true. Evening collects in my kitchen like a tide that knows the schedule. I roll the plan set and band it. When I open email, a note from Nora Klein waits at the top. She writes like a good engineer draws, clean lines, only what is necessary. She reminds me the trust requires annual charitable reports, cites a clause about maintaining respectful relationships with surviving family. No siren, just a professional courtesy and an offer to talk if I want context. I read twice and set the printout beside Caroline's card so the two rectangles share an edge. Their corners touch like a small diagram of tension. I don't reply. I don't cancel the appointment. I don't practice a new title in the mirror. Outside, the bay darkens to wet steel. Somewhere beyond the seawall, water changes its mind and turns back. Inside, the kitchen light holds its circle on the table. I sit until the circle feels earned, then switch it off and let the room keep what it knows. Palm Beach Yacht Hall glows like a glass buoy at dusk, string lights lifted into the palms, brass railings polished to a patient shine. Valets move cars with the choreography of a well-rehearsed overture. I arrive early enough to feel the heat thinning into evening and stand a moment under the portico, letting the bay air move through my shirt. Inside, the lobby holds a low current of voices. A floral arch waits for photos, and a step-and-repeat backdrop leans against a bank of windows so the water can volunteer as witness. I smooth my sleeves and remind myself of the only checklist I trust. Be present, be clean, be true. Ava intercepts me before the registration table. The dress is perfect, the smile almost. She brushes a thumb along my cuff as if erasing lint that isn't there. We move toward the assistant who distributes lapel pins and name cards. The young woman asks for my affiliation. Ava answers before I can. Coastal Project Consultant, she says, and the assistant checks a box on a tablet with the relief of someone who has found the right label. The pin goes on my shirt. It weighs less than a nail and more than it should. We walk the perimeter first, past high-top tables in linen jackets, past a trio testing a jazz standard, past waiters balancing trays of pale drinks that suggest they taste like clouds. I note doorways, exits, points where a crowd could back up and spill. In the ballroom, the floor throws the string lights back at themselves in a soft glitter. Near the terrace doors, the night arrives in stages. First a salt suggestion, then a gentler wind. Ava guides me into a small radius of attention. Cole, tall and athletic, in a suit that pretends not to be expensive. His mother, whose coral pen seems to have memorized the lighting scheme. 2 donors, a board member whose handshake measures outcomes. There is the usual exchange of names, the sequence of nods, the practice lift at the end of a sentence to invite agreement. Someone asks what line of work I am in. Ava answers easily, adding a few phrases about site logistics, stakeholder coordination, permitting. I feel the conversation stiffen around the knees. When the board member looks at me for confirmation, I make mine plain. I run crews that set piles, pour and cure by the water. Weather is the partner we never get to choose. It lands without drama, the way truth does when it isn't auditioning for a part. The smile that follows is polite and immediate, a hinged thing designed to keep the hinges quiet. The board member pivots to the band. Cole's mother asks about the floral program. A donor's gaze drops briefly to my boots and snaps back to eye level. Ava's hand touches my arm like a stage direction. I let the scene move on, cataloging textures, a napkin adjusted that did not need adjusting, a place card on a nearby table turned slightly, a glance that turns careful and then neutral. Nothing that would shout on camera, everything that would register in a room tuned to code. At the Arch, a junior reporter canvasses for a quote about legacy and coastal work. She is earnest, new to her press badge. Ava starts to answer for both of us, smoothing, rounding, keeping nouns as general as weather. The reporter's eyes find mine. I give her a sentence fit for record. Our coast takes a beating, our crews pour honest walls, the bay does the rest. She writes it down, then writes something else I cannot see. Out on the terrace, cameras click in a polite murmuration. The trio starts a ballad that makes everyone's posture look more expensive. On the way back inside, Ava leans close enough that I feel the words more than hear them. Let's not complicate narratives. I tell her that truth is the least complicated thing in the room. It just doesn't match the script. Her jaw sets, then releases. We re-enter the bright. I stand for a while near the donor wall. Names are etched into brass in a font that wants to live forever. A coordinator in a black blazer approaches, apologizes for a crowded seating arrangement, and moves my place card 2 tables away from the board cluster to a smaller island nearer the bar. It is done so gracefully I could thank her. I do not. The quartet eases into an up-tempo number while 2 servers over-polish a spotless glass. If a man is serious about being calm, he builds a habit around it. I check my pulse the way I'd check a pump, not for fireworks, for reliability. The room can do its work. I will do mine. In my head, I note the small tally points that become, in the right light, data. The preemptive label, the correction, the freeze frame, the reassignment, the reporter's second line of notes. On the far side of the room, a group laughs at the exact right loudness. Near me, a woman examines a program with respect usually reserved for memorials. The toast begins. Cole's mother speaks with the benevolent authority of someone who has practiced gratitude as ceremony. Cole follows with something easy and well-tailored. Ava closes thanking those who believed in her vision and supported the family story. I take my glass with the rest and let the bubbles hiss out under the hum of the room. This is their evening. I don't need to make it mine. I have already decided what I will do with the morning. I find my way to the lobby while applause is still a weather pattern. Outside, the humidity receives me like a cooling bath. The valet stands in the white cone of a lamp and whistles softly between cars. When my truck pulls around, it looks stubborn and honest under the string lights, which is to say, it looks like itself. In the cab, door shut, the hall becomes a framed picture in the windshield. I set the lapel pin on the console, its little weight suddenly persuasive about nothing. Somewhere behind me, a guest laughs, bright and round. I breathe once, twice, steady. Then I do what I should have done earlier in the day. I decide to call Nora in the morning. Not to punish my daughter, to protect the line a man stands on when the tide wants him ankle deep in someone else's story. I will ask about the clause I remember from her note, the one that measures respect in conduct, not captions. I will gather texts and photos and small moments not as weapons but as weather records. You don't argue with a storm, you document the wind. I pull away from the valet circle, windows cracked, the bay slipping its clean salt into the cab. The dashboard hums in its old familiar key. Far out past the seawall, a marker light blinks the same message it has blinked for years. Here is the channel. Here is the way through. I keep the truck between the lines and let that be enough for tonight. Morning arrives like a clean ledger. The bay is the color of brushed steel and the air under my eaves smells faintly of iodine. I grind coffee, unroll a pad, and list last night as if it were a job. Preemptive relabeling at check-in, the correction in the donor circle, the smile that stalled, the quiet relocation of a place card, the junior reporter's second line of notes. Feelings make poor evidence. Timestamps do better. I mark times beside each incident, add where I was standing, who else was there, what the room sounded like. At 8, I call Nora Klein. She answers on the second ring with the voice of someone who alphabetizes her calm. I give her facts, not flourish. Months of small edits, the lunch where the word construction was treated like it might chip the flatware. The party and its polite recoil. She listens without encouraging outrage. Then she sets the instrument on the table. The trust, she says, contains 2 live wires. The annual charitable giving requirement, minimum $450,000 to registered nonprofits, reported each year. And the clause about maintaining respectful, supportive relationships with surviving family, which explicitly bars public disparagement or repudiation. I lean on the counter, pen idle. Nora explains the path like a sequence of forms, an informal review if concerns arise, a formal notice if pattern and public setting are present, a 72-hour remedial opportunity that allows a beneficiary to correct the record, acknowledge the relationship publicly, and cure any charity reporting gaps. If good faith actions happen within that window, the committee tends to de-escalate. If not, the process continues. Her tone carries no threat. It is the sound concrete makes when you tap it with a hammer and listen for hollow. She asked for what lawyers always ask for, evidence, screenshots of text in which I was introduced as maintenance, photos where captions called me help, the recording of the Flagler room lunch if I have it, names of people within earshot last night, any program or seating revisions with times. I tell her I'm compiling and that I keep my notes like a foreman does, context paired to a specific stake in the ground. She asks delicately what I want if this goes all the way. I tell her I don't want the money. I want the line maintained. If funds ever try to revert to me, I will waive the right and send them where the instrument points. The Harbor Light Trust for coastal kids. I hear her exhale, not surprised. only steadier. We agree she will draft a courteous notice, no accusations, just clauses quoted, recent incidents summarized neutrally, and specific remedial options. Public acknowledgement of the relationship, correction of misstatements, confirmation that charitable filings are current. I ask for a few hours to speak with Ava first, in case a private conversation can spare everyone the formality. Understood, Nora says. Document the attempt. I choose a cafe by the bay for breakfast, plastic chairs and strong coffee, a place where goals argue with conviction. I text Ava to come alone. She arrives 10 minutes late with a stranger in a slate blazer whose badge reads something agency-sounding. The woman smiles with practiced warmth and starts a pitch before the cups sweat. She proposes a narrative tidy-up. Position me as retired advisor, supply 3 short talking points, stage a single photo of father and daughter aligned on coastal stewardship to circulate before the next event. We'll keep it elegant and uncontroversial, she says, laying a folder on the table like a napkin. I look at the bay instead of the folder. A story that needs polishing every hour isn't a story that holds, I say. Ava's jaw tightens and smooths the way a sail snaps and then finds its wind. The handler flips the folder open to a timeline, and a stapled contract packet slides into view. There, in a block of legal gray, is a brand clause I have never seen. During sponsored content windows, avoid on-camera association with family whose blue-collar imagery may misalign with campaign values. Violations trigger clawbacks and cancellation. The ink is ordinary, but it changes the room. This is not only shame, this is a payment schedule dressed as etiquette. Ava sees me see it. Color climbs her neck like a slow tide. Everyone has clauses, she says. It's just how this works. I take a breath that tastes like salt and cheap coffee. I tell her repairs are made with behavior, not with captions, and that I won't counterfeit my life so a brand can keep its mood. The handler suggests a compromise, call me retired advisor for 30 days, then reassess. I shake my head. The gulls argue again, more honestly than any meeting I have had this month. We finish in a silence that knows what it is. When Ava stands, she leaves the folder closed, as if paper can keep consequences from evaporating. I pay the bill and watch them walk to the lot, 2 silhouettes aligned by inconvenience. In the truck, I text Nora, send the notice. She replies that email will go first, then courier, and the 72-hour clock starts at confirmed receipt. She will keep the language clean, clauses quoted, incidents dated, remedies specific, tone respectful. I thank her and put my phone face down so it can hum without changing my mind. Back at the house, I make an evidence pile. The phone gives up its scrollable past. The text where I was pitched is maintenance. The flagged photo with my face cropped out of the caption. The clip at lunch with the softened voice around construction. Last night's name badge and place card, each with timestamps. I add names to a list, who stood where, who made which comment, who might confirm that the question was asked and the answer was edited. Weather reports live in boxes like this: direction, speed, gusts, witnesses to gusts. By late afternoon, Nora confirms delivery. The clock begins, a practical metronome no one else can hear. I sit at the table and draw a neat column. 48 hours to the yacht charity event, 72 to the deadline. The remediation is easy to understand and hard to do. Stand somewhere public, say what is true. Put it in writing where the record can hold it. I will attend the event and keep still. If she chooses remedy, I will stand in the back and breathe. If she chooses rejection, I will keep my notes straight and my shoulders level. Dusk arrives in long strokes. The bay darkens to graphite. I roll the pad shut and slide the rubber band into place the way I do before a storm, not with panic, with respect. Outside, somewhere beyond the seawall, water turns around almost without a sound. Inside, the house holds its familiar quiet, and I let it. Tomorrow belongs to proof, tonight belongs to the discipline of not rehearsing speeches. I rinse the cup, set it upside down to dry, and leave the window cracked so the tide can remind me of the clock I just started. If you're still watching and this resonates, drop number 1 in the comments to show you're with me. Now don't blink, the stakes are about to rise. Sunset paints the yacht like a stage set, the hull taking on a warm gleam as string lights switch from decoration to duty. Halyards tick against masts. The pier smells of tarred rope and clean salt. I arrive in a white shirt and clean boots, same as the night before, and let the breeze cool the day out of me before stepping onto the gangway. On deck, a trio coaxes velvet from a saxophone. Tablets glow at a donation table. Phones are up everywhere, small periscopes searching for story. The PR machine is already in motion. I can see it in the little cue cards the handler tucks under a server's elbow. Donor wall at 1900, quick micro thank yous near the bar rail, no long speeches, keep backgrounds tidy. She notices me and drifts over, all surface ease, suggesting a photo near the Burgee flags and a caption that names me as a retired advisor. I decline with a thanks. She smiles like I have agreed, then moves along, her clipboard flipping like a gull's wing. Ava is bright as a flare and just as urgent. The dress is a second skin, the smile is something practiced to stay put. She escorts me toward a cluster of donors and a city council member with a camera primed at hip level. Introductions unfurl. When someone asks what I do, she is quick with the varnish. He's a coastal project consultant. The phone eye blinks. I set my answer down like a level. I run crews that set piles and pour by the water. It is not a contest, but I feel the room keep score. A micro wince here, a glance at my boots there. The council member's spouse pretends to study a napkin and decides it needs straightening. A reel is born in the wild. A glossy-haired guest mouths a caption. Old school dad, new school party, and points the shot to catch me against the rail. The handler angles herself to block the frame's worst truths and fails by an inch. None of it is loud. All of it is recorded. I stand where the deck meets the gangway and take the measure. Halyard tick, donor chatter, the saxophone's patient hum. I'm here to witness, not to provoke. A staffer in an all-black blazer approaches with apology cued in her eyes. She needs to upgrade my wristband to a color that keeps me out of the VIP rope during the program. The band is technically a downgrade, but the euphemism has been told where to sit. I hold out my wrist. The new band pinches. Nearby, the coordinator reorders the acknowledgement list on a tablet and slides my name into a folder called General. A tray passes with pale drinks that hope to taste like weather. I take water. The donor wall bristles with brass names under museum lighting. The MC warms up the mic and invites Ava to say a few words. This is the window Nora described. An easy cure if taken, a bruise if not. All she would have to do is claim me aloud and write the label. For a second, her gaze catches mine, then veers to Cole's mother. The needle drops onto optics and the room spins. She thanks the board, partners, mentors. She praises every professional who shaped this journey. When a guest asks into her handheld who I am, curious, not cruel, she answers for the nearest ear and the furthest speaker. An old maintenance contact, sweet, but not our brand. The phrase goes everywhere at once, into the PA, into the phones, into the quiet that follows when a room drops a glass and the glass decides not to break. The saxophone misses a breath and catches it. A gull cries like a hinge. Nora has been by the rail the whole time, a calm in a black sheath dress with a folder tucked under one arm. She approaches without hurry and introduces herself to Ava the way one introduces a caution sign, polite, visible, firm. She speaks in the cadence of instructions that have been tested. The trust requires 2 lanes of care. She says timely annual charitable reporting and respectful, supportive relationships with surviving family, including no public disparagement or repudiation. Tonight's conduct will be logged for the committee's formal review. The 72-hour remedial option remains open. The words carry no heat, they carry weight. Ava flushes hard and tries to shake it off. She calls the clause outdated and says she won't pretend manual labor is her legacy. Phones tilt as if the deck is listed. Cole's mother performs a half step back that reads as ballet for exit. The handler hisses a whisper that wants to be a rewind. The room keeps its volume but loses its key. Then the rip current takes a shape. A man pushes through with a manila envelope and breath that smells like a hurry. He claims to be Ava's biological father and flourishes printed DNA results at camera height. He points at me and calls me the stand-in. Only one person on the pier does not react. Nora opens the envelope, scans headers, and notes in a tone just above private that the chain of custody is wrong, the lab identifier is mismatched, and the template contains a typo she has seen in other forgeries. Security arrives in the space created by her mildness. The man backs up into a story about gag orders and media rights, then lets himself be walked to the edge of light and off it. A row of phones follows like flowers held too high at a funeral. Someone mutters fraud. Someone else taps send. The MC tries to regain a beat no one can hear anymore. The trio plays its way into a major key and stays there, insistently cheerful. Donors exchange looks that mean different things in different families, and the same thing in rooms like this. We'll be in touch. I take a photo of the podium screen with its timestamp, another of the donor wall clock, a third of the security escort moving through the brass glow. I do not take a photo of my daughter's face. There is nothing there I want to remember like this. A push alert lights 3 phones near me at once. Charity cruise derails. I feel more tired than angry the way you do when a storm you saw coming arrives exactly on schedule. Nora steps close enough that only the rail can hear. The committee will convene early, she says. The window remains 72 hours to make a clear correction without euphemism. I nod. I have my statement of fact drafted in my head. Times, places, words, witnesses. A wall has to say what it is and then bear it. I leave before the raffle. On the gangway, the night presses a clean hand to my face, and the bay offers its old medicine. In the lot, my truck glows dull and honest under a street lamp that doesn't flatter anyone. When the engine turns, the radio stays off. I roll the window down and let the salt in. The marker light beyond the seawall blinks a patient lesson. Here is the channel, here is the way through, and I follow it back to shore. Night sits on the house like a tarp, tight at the corners, humming with whatever the wind can't carry away. I clear the table, lay out a legal pad and the printed emails, and build the thing that can stand up in daylight. A statement of fact. I treat it like a punch list. Flagler. Room lunch, date, time. The way her voice dipped on the word construction as if sound alone could scuff porcelain. Engagement announcement edits, the preemptive label at check-in, the donor circle freeze, the place card slide. Yacht incident, the hot mic phrase, who stood within 10 feet, which phones were up. I write like I set forms. Square, plumb, no space for air to get clever. When I finish, I sign with a slow hand so the ink dries into its own small promise. A second page is shorter and heavier. If forfeiture happens, any reversion is waived by me and goes where the instrument points. Harbor Light Trust. I print it twice, sign both, set one aside for Nora and one for a file I will label and then try not to look at. Paper goes into an envelope with timestamps on the flap. The house approves by staying quiet. At 8 sharp, Nora takes my call. I hear the clack of a pen cap and the kind of breath people learn in rooms without windows. She explains cure like a set of specs, a plain public acknowledgement using father, not consultant, not mentor. An accurate description of my work, an explicit retraction of maintenance, not our brand, confirmation that annual charitable reporting is current, delivery within the 72-hour window with proof anyone can verify, on-record post and spoken correction captured without edits. She doesn't add adjectives, it helps. I remind her of my constraint, the quiet period on a transaction that doesn't want my name anywhere near a microphone. No counter PR, I say, no reveals. Conduct only good, she says. That's where the committee lives. Messages begin to arrive like a weather change you can taste before you see it. Ava sends a text that reads like a truce flag someone forgot to wash. She's sorry for optics. She wants to fix the narrative. She's under pressure. Cole's mother follows with a carefully warmed suggestion that a brand-forward clarification could settle things for everyone. Then the handler appears with a draft caption that calls me retired advisor and tucks me between donor appreciation and a view of the bay. I send one reply to the whole orbit. The remedy must be plain, public, and personal. No substitutions. We meet in a hotel lounge that believes in carpet and soft lamps. I chose it because no one points a camera at a hallway you can fall asleep in. She arrives with a folder in the posture of someone braced for impact. We sit at an end table that imitates privacy. I slide Nora's checklist across. She reads it the way you read a recipe you don't want to make and then says she needs softer words. Everyone does the scripted version. I say nothing for a beat and then tell her that the only truth I trust. A cheated mix looks smooth for a minute and fails under load. The room hears us not arguing and gives us points for decorum. I lay my 3 non-negotiables on the table like tools. I will stand with you if you speak truth, not script. I am not after the money. I have waived any reversion. I won't appear in staged optics labeled anything but what I am. She looks at the floor, then at the door, then at the checklist again. Her mouth forms the word penalties before sound catches up. She admits the clause, the clawbacks if the yacht clip keeps burning, the calls from people who loved her when she was quiet and love her less now that the video has a life. She asks if acknowledge could replace apologize. It can't. I take out one page I wrote in block type and slide it across. One paragraph, no heroics, my name, father, Seawalls and Cruise, a direct retraction, an apology to me, not to optics or to those who may have been offended. I tell her it can live as a post and a spoken statement tonight at the community pier. Nora will witness. A local stringer can shoot clean, no cuts. We can be done with pretending and start with repair. The handler intrudes by phone the way a storm horn cuts through fog. I hear her in the tinny distance offering a bridge post that swaps father for mentor and buries correction inside a gallery of sunset photos. Ava's eyes ask me to say yes to a smaller lie. I hold still. The phone goes dark without a decision. Nora's text lands like a clock placed on the table. T 36 hours. She can lock a verified forum tonight if Ava commits within the hour. Proof matters. Time matters more. I repeat the offer once, quietly. Ava asks if I'll stand within reach if she says it plain. Yes. If she reads the scripted path? No. We part at the door like co-workers after a meeting that found no motion. The elevator breathes with us and takes her down before the hour runs out. In the truck by the seawall, I write my own list on the back of a receipt. Email statement and waiver, export photo timestamps, print the hot mic transcript, index witnesses by proximity, set a reminder to charge the recorder. I add 2 words I've used for storms and scaffolds, hold steady. Home again, I scan the signed pages and send them to Nora with a subject line that doesn't need drama. Statement plus waiver plus index. Her reply is quick and bone dry. Received, formatting for exhibits, verified forum on standby, T3512. I put the phone face down and let it hum into the wood. Midnight edges in, the bay breathes under the cracked window. The house answers. I picture the pier in one small square of light where a person could stand and say the sentence that will not make them loved, but will make them true. The easiest thing in the world is a caption. The hardest thing is a noun. I place the pen parallel to the pad and leave the envelope where I can see it from the hallway. If she calls, I will drive. If she doesn't, the window will close and the file will become weather. Either way, I'll be the same man in the morning. Boots by the door, plan set rolled tight, pulse steady enough to trust. The morning holds its breath the way a form does before a pour. I make coffee, square the stack of papers from the night shift, and finish the witness statement the way I'd finish a punch list. Line by line, no adjectives I can't defend. Flagler room lunch, engagement announcement introductions, the hot mic on the yacht, timestamps, locations, who stood within earshot, what changed after each moment. I sign my name and print it slow so the ink won't feather. A second page waves any reversion to me and points the money, if money returns, where the instrument already points. Harbor Light Trust. I scan, attach, send. My outbox clicks like a ratchet. By mid-morning, Ava posts something careful. The header thanks mentors, colleagues, and all who supported the journey. The paragraph is a quilt of gratitude stitched from neutral fabric. It names no father, retracts nothing, apologizes to no one in particular. I read it twice. The words don't leak, they don't hold either. I save a PDF, name it with the timestamp, and file it under insufficient remedy. A minute later, Nora's note lands. Logged, criteria not met, T6 hours. Window remains open. I leave the phone face down until the sound stops meaning anything. Online air shifts like weather. The yacht clip splits and multiplies as smaller screens pass it around. A dock worker's daughter replies with a photo of her dad's hands, captioned with the kind of pride that doesn't ask permission. Someone starts a tag, #brand of respect, and a dozen stories attached to it, each finding its own current. Some defend Ava as ambitious, some call the whole thing classist theater, some are there to fish in choppy water. I don't answer anyone. I take screenshots and archive them like tide tables. Work steadies the pulse. At the seawall site, the crew is already chalked and gridded and laughing the way men laugh when they know the job is solvable. We check forms, verify ties, run a slump test that comes in honest. While the pump truck folds into its stance, two carpenters off to the side talk around headlines the way you circle a rip to find the outflow. Then the conversation returns to mix and cure times, to the shade moving across the pour, to who's on finish. The bay smells like salt and rebar. The only camera on site is a phone used as a level when someone forgets the real one. I make notes on weather because it's what you do when a storm isn't on top of you yet. At noon, the phone vibrates in my pocket. Nora again. Window at T3 hours. No compliant action to date. I keep my answer to 2 words. Understood standing, and sweep the edge of bleed water with a magnesium float, watching shine turn to a dull that promises strength. Mid-afternoon, a foreman from another job texts a screenshot from a brand rep. Sponsorship paused pending review. Another follows about potential clawbacks if values alignment breach is confirmed. I forward both to Nora with the subject line, consequences, external, and put the phone away. The crew calls for edging trowels and a radio that only understands classic rock. Before the window closes, Ava tries one more post, softer than the first, a little longer, and still curved around the hole where a sentence should be. Nora's reply to both of us is a line drawn with a ruler. Remedy must be plain, public, personal. I look at the bay and imagine words spoken into wind, how they disappear if you whisper, how they carry if you mean them. The clock takes its last seconds without announcing itself, and then the quiet after a deadline arrives. Thinner, not louder. Nora calls at 5. The window is closed. Committee meets in the morning, she says. Keep your phone on. No comment to media. I tell her I'll be in the office by 8 with printed copies and a checked index. She hangs up with a clean, thank you. I put the tools away and run a hand over the first cured section of wall. It feels like intention that kept its promise. On the drive back, the radio throws me a headline I don't want and I turn it off. I park across from Ava's building for 10 minutes, long enough to see a tow truck idle and leave, a courier ring twice and hand a thick envelope to the doorman, and a florist carry away rented centerpieces from a prior booking. None of it is dramatic. It's the sound paperwork makes when it hits the wrong desk. A text lands from Cole's mother. We need space during a difficult transition. It reads like a memo written by a committee of careful voices. I add it to the file, not from pettiness, completeness. At home, the requests collect. A local radio station wants a quote. A national morning show offers a car at 6 a.m. to tell your story. I write the same 2 sentences and let Nora send them. No comment. We trust the process. Any reversion is waived a Harbor Light Trust per instrument. I do not say what I could say. Silence is not a tactic tonight. It's a specification. I lay the paper on the table in a neat storm track. Nora's original notice, Ava's first post and its timestamp, the second post and its timestamp, brand pause emails, club suspension, privileges on hold pending review printed from a forwarded screenshot, an HOA hearing notice regarding unauthorized filming in common areas, the committee's agenda slot and dial-in, my signed statement, the waiver. Each page carries its own weight. Together, they lean the way a stack leans when it wants to become a file with a spine. I put a binder clip on it and the whole thing behaves. Dusk brings out the metallic in the water. I walk the public pier because I have always believed a man ought to meet the day somewhere honest before he asks it to end. A boy in a sun-bleached hat drops a line over the rail and watches his cork like patience is a sport. A couple argue softly about nothing in particular and then hold hands because the wind reminds them. I lean on the rail where the paint is warm and watch the marker lights blink their slow grammar, here, here, here. Seawalls don't choose the weather, just spec and cure. You decide what you're made of, then you prove it under load. Back home, I set the binder clip stack in my bag along with a legal pad, 2 pens, and the habit of not speaking more than necessary. On the counter, the phone glows with a few last messages I don't open. Tomorrow, there will be the waiting room quiet of a conference floor, Nora's measured page turning, and the sound of people deciding they believe the instructions they wrote. I rinse the coffee mug, leave it upside down on the rack, and crack the window for the tide. The house exhales. I let it. The light on the bay keeps time for the 1 clock that matters now, and I turn off mine. The conference floor is quiet enough to hear the HVAC think. Glass walls turn the morning gray into a kind of order. A long table waits with water, legal pads, and a small recorder whose red eye watches without blinking. I set my binder on the edge nearest the door, give myself the view of the exits the way I do on any site, and breathe like I'm about to tie steel, slow, on purpose, ready to hold. The mediator begins with a throat clearing that sounds like a gavel would if it respected carpet. Purpose, scope, exhibits. Nora's voice carries the comfort of a level placed on a true surface. She marks each document into the record. The notice she sent, the 2 posts that failed to cure, the transcript of the hot mic, pause emails from sponsors, suspension notes from the club, the HOA hearing letter, my signed statement, the waiver directing any reversion to Harbor Light Trust. The chair confirms what everyone already knows. The 72-hour window expired without compliant remedy. No judgment yet, only the fact of time. When it's my turn, I don't tell a story. I read a path. Flagler room lunch, engagement party introductions, yacht deck. Dates, times, the exact language used, where I stood, who else could have heard. I keep my nouns heavy and my adjectives light. I do not speak about money. I mention the waiver in a single sentence, not as theater, only as alignment with what I already told Nora. If funds try to return, they don't stop with me. The recorder blinks, satisfied. Ava enters alone. Sleep has erased the polish from her face and left something raw but watchful. She sits, folds her hands, and looks down while the chair recites the clause language. Respectful, supportive relationships, no public disparagement, charity reporting obligation separate and still required. When invited, she admits the phrase on the yacht was hers. She says pressure exists, points to the brand clause I saw, names the clawbacks, then says the line that matters. She chose the words and no one forced her. The panel listens like seawalls listen to waves, assessing, not impressed. They ask if she will apologize publicly and plainly by my name and by what I do. Her mouth opens, closes, opens again. Yes, she says into the carpet. The room does not move. The chair clarifies standards as if drawing a clean cross-section. The clause is not about deference, he says, but about relationship, support and respect shown in public as well as private. The window was designed for prompt correction. Missed windows do not reopen. Late steps cannot undo noncompliance, but can count toward mitigation in future petitions or inform how related obligations are structured. Words measured to the ounce. Nobody reaches for a tissue. Law is the opposite of a warm room, which is partly why it holds. Nora offers a bridge without pretending it is a bridge back. Post-window, she suggests, there is still a right shape for conduct. Speak on record in her own voice using father and a true description of my work. State that the maintenance, not our brand remark was wrong. Show proof that annual charitable reporting is current. Demonstrate for 12 months that there will be no edits, euphemisms, or scripted erasures. None of this binds the committee, she says, but it frames what repair might look like if the door is to remain even slightly unlatched. A lawyer to my left asks whether the hot mic clip can be authenticated beyond social circulation. Nora answers with headers, time codes, and the venue's audio text affidavit. Another asks whether I have leveraged media attention for advantage. No, I say. Nora adds the quiet period note that has kept me from counter PR from the start. The panel nods at restraint, the way a field inspector nods at tight rebar, unglamorous, necessary. Deliberations will be private, the chair says. A written finding will follow. He adds something the recorder still hears. Preliminary posture points toward forfeiture. Good faith steps taken now will not count as cure but may inform the structure of outcomes. The word outcomes lands with a thud that doesn't bounce. Ava thanks the panel in a small voice. The mediator clicks the recorder off, ending one kind of weather and starting another. In the hallway, the carpet gives back the steps we press into it. Nora leans against a glass panel and translates legal into human. They're likely to rule against her, she says, but truth told plainly still matters. Speak it in public. Carry it forward. I tell her my two conditions again, the way a crew chief repeats a safety brief. I'll stand nearby if Ava speaks without euphemism, and I won't appear as a prop in staged optics. Nora nods like she has already drafted 3 acceptable verbs and crossed out 2. We agree to make the first attempt tonight plain and local. No step and repeat, no rented light. The community pier has weathered more truth than any hotel ballroom. A stringer from the paper can bring a camera, and Nora will witness. I will stand a few feet back inside the wind, outside the frame. If there has to be a script, it will be the one paragraph I handed over yesterday. My name, my relationship, what I do, what she said, why it was wrong, and an apology to the person and not to the optics. Dusk arrives early at the water's edge. Gulls skate the wind and make a religion of it. The pier planks understand every boot that has ever crossed them. The stringer tests her mic against the breeze. Nora checks a second recorder and keeps one hand on the pages so they won't try to leave. Ava comes down the boardwalk alone. Her hands tremble around a printout that has no logo. The brand handler is not here. Cole's mother is not here. The room, for once, is the right size. She begins before the light can fail. My name lands first, unadorned. Father follows it, not capitalized, not hedged. She names my work with nouns sturdy enough to carry their own weight. She recalls the yacht remark and calls it by its right name, wrong. The apology is to me, not to those who may have been offended, and it is small enough to be believable. It ends without the trick of a lesson. The stringer nods once and lowers the camera. Gulls argue over nothing, which is their specialty. I do not step into the frame. I do not touch her shoulder. Nora stamps the time on a form that likely has boxes for everything except the part that matters. We walk off the pier separately because it is not a good night for pretending to be a single picture. In the parking lot, I look at the water and think about lift and cure. A wall can't hurry its own strength. It can only keep the mix honest and wait. Back home, I log the clip, the timestamp, the names present. I write post-window correction recorded on my list and underline it once. The committee's finding will arrive when it arrives. I already know what the day after a ruling feels like. It feels like work. I open a clean page and title it "If We're Building Again." The bullets are not grand. Answer calls, use the right names, show up without scripts, pay what is owed, let verbs speak for nouns. I leave the list open on the table and crack the kitchen window an inch. The bay moves in the dark, not caring about clauses or captions, only about honest edges. I hold that thought like a handrail until the house finds its quiet and keeps it. The call comes at 9:03, a precise ring in a quiet room. Nora is already on the line with the chair and a recorder that blinks like a lighthouse. Steady, indifferent. The chair reads findings in a voice drilled free of weather. The 72-hour window lapsed without compliant cure. Public repudiation was documented with corroborating witnesses and authenticated audio. The late peer correction is noted as mitigation but not cure. The panel's decision is straight as a plumb line, benefits forfeited. Any reversion proceeds as directed by instrument. I say what I have said since the first conversation. My waiver stands, funds go to Harbor Light Trust. A beep marks the end of the official weather. The call ends and the house returns to ordinary silence. Paper begins where voices stop. At Nora's office, glass and carpet stage the ritual without glamour. We sign what must be signed, the forfeiture order, instructions to surrender assets purchased with trust funds, notice to the trustee to divert principal and any remaining income to Harbor Light, my acknowledgement that I waive any claim now and later. Nora speaks in nouns, courier, ledger, chain of title, staff copy, bind, and stamp until the file grows its own spine. A courier departs with a satchel like a small oath. When the door closes behind him, the room exhales. Harbor Light joins by speaker. The program manager's tone is the sound of work that knows where it's going. Scholarships, apprenticeships, a small grant line for harbor safety, all practical, all measurable. I ask for anonymity in the reports. She says their impact summaries can list private reversion per instrument. It's a phrase without perfume, and that suits me. Before she hangs up, she thanks me in a way that belongs to the work, not to the donor. Consequences settle in like a tide you expect and still respect. Screenshots arrive, contracts terminated, clawback schedules issued, a polite paragraph about values alignment. The club revokes membership with a letter that reads like a handshake you aren't invited to. The HOA sets a hearing date and a fine for filming in common areas without approval. The lender posts a notice of default with timelines honest enough to make your breath slow. I print each, staple its pages, write the date in the corner, and stack them left to right like a storm track after landfall. I drive by Ava's building because logistics are kinder than speeches. I leave a sealed envelope with the doorman, a flash drive of the peer correction, a Harbor Light brochure with a contact circled, and a sticky note with my number and 2 words, for logistics. The property manager is working through a checklist with her at the desk: keys, parking decal, elevator reservation for move-out. Their heads are bent in the posture of paperwork. There is no scene to witness, which is the point. I return to the truck before she looks up. Media knocks as if knocking creates a door. A national show offers a car at dawn, a platform, a narrative I won't recognize once they're done sanding it. A columnist asks for the father's perspective. Nora returns the same 2 sentences we've used from the start. No comment, reversion waived to Harbor Light Trust per instrument. I keep my quiet period intact. Identity has always been the least interesting part of the story. Conduct is the whole thing. At the seawall, the crew strips forms in a rhythm that doesn't care about rulings. Steel shows where it should. Concrete holds where it must. We tap the cured section and listen for hollow. None answers. The finished trowel sings the low note I trust. I sign a change order for riprap along a needy edge and scribble a reminder about the tide window on Friday. The bay is uninterested in committees, which is one of the bay's many virtues. In the afternoon, a text from Ava appears with no decoration. Reporting to Harbor Light tomorrow admin intake. It's not an apology. It's better. I answer with 3 words that fit the job. Show up. Be early. A beat later. Understood. I don't lean on the exchange for meaning. Simple labor doesn't need more than a start time. Nora coordinates the dull mercy of trucks and locks. Asset returns require proof of purchase, serial numbers, and the patience of people trained to keep calm while elevators stall. I do not offer money. I offer a mover who knows how to keep doors from gossiping. She declines, then later accepts. The PR handler is suddenly absent from every thread. Cole's family sends nothing at all. The absence is instructive. By evening, Harbor Light emails a receipt that reads like a tide table. Funds settled, first disbursement schedule drafted, 43 scholarships sketched over 5 years with a parallel lane for apprenticeships and trades that put a hand on real things. I print the receipt and clip it to the ruling. In the margin I write a single word, done. Not as victory, only as completion of a transfer that has been correct since the first time I thought it. I drive to the public pier out of habit, and because habits decide who we are when we're tired. Gulls work their shift. A couple leans over the rail and points at nothing in particular like it's an old friend. On a bench, I see Ava holding a paper folder and a pen, hair pulled back, phone face down. No camera, no handler, no performance, just a person preparing to stand somewhere ordinary and be useful. I do not approach. The wind is enough company. Back home, I file the signed rulings under a tab labeled Resolved and start a new folder labeled Rebuild. One divider for Harbor Light impact reports, one for receipts and schedules, one that might stay empty. On the kitchen table, the stack sits square, corners aligned. The house smells like coffee cooling and salt sneaking through a cracked window. I think about the rule I've used for every pour worth naming: honest mix, proper placement, patient cure. People like to imagine strength as an event. It is not. It is a discipline. Night arrives with the sound of small boats slapping pylons. The phone lights up with invitations to tell a version of the story that would let someone else hold the microphone. I let the screen go black. Tomorrow I'll drive to Harbor Light and hand a staffer a list of dock foremen who will give a kid a chance if a kid shows up. Tomorrow I'll check the wall in the South Cove and decide whether the seam needs stitching or just time. Tomorrow is not a verdict, it is a sequence. Before bed, I write a brief list on a clean sheet and head it with words that feel plain enough to keep. If we're building again. Under it, small verbs: answer, name, show, pay, keep. I leave the page exposed. The bay moves in the dark, unbothered by captions and rulings, loyal only to depth and the force that pulls it. I crack the window a little wider and let that loyalty in. 6 weeks out, the Harbor Light lobby smells like copier heat and wintergreen cleaner, the scent of paperwork that intends to become action. A corkboard behind the desk carries a grid of first names and start dates, black marker over colored paper. Blue for scholarships, orange for apprenticeships, green for safety grants. No plaques, no donor wall, just a calendar that looks like a tide chart. I sign a simple logistics note and ask the program manager to keep quarterly reports anonymous. Numbers and first names, no embroidery. She nods and slides a folder across, tabs crisp, corners square. Impact here is measured in bus passes and tool stipends, not adjectives. At a side station, I spot Ava bent over an intake sheet. Her hair is pulled back the way people wear it when the day is about output. The light is ordinary. The phone rests face down beside a yellow pad. She dials, waits, leaves a message with a time, a place, a checklist. ID, FAFSA login, proof of address. She writes, call back after 4 and draws a box to be checked later. No audience, no caption. Consistency will do what speeches can't. I give the receptionist a manila envelope with vendor contacts for boots and basic PPE discounted for students. It is the kind of help that sits in a drawer until someone needs it, then becomes the only thing that matters. We speak briefly in the hallway the way coworkers do when the stairwell offers a neutral echo. "How's the schedule?" I ask. "Full in a good way," she says. We agree on Saturday morning to move 3 boxes to storage: books, winter clothes, a kettle she refused to throw away. The words don't reach back and they don't swing at the future. They aim for the narrow middle where life takes place. At dawn the next day, Atlas smells like wet sawdust and coffee. A new apprentice, Luis, rides along with our finisher. He stands inside the caution tape as if a line of paint could hold back everything coming at him. I hand him a pencil and tell him to read a slump next to the crew lead. He squats, watches the cone, measures the spread, looks up. "Honest mix," he says, as if a phrase can become an oath once spoken. I nod and have him mark it in his pad. We talk about bleed water and patience, about the way a wall tells you through the trowel when it's ready to be touched and when it wants to be left alone. He does more listening than speaking, which is how you learn to carry load. The tag that flared on the night of the yacht has cooled to a workable glow. Every day or so, someone posts a grandfather's knuckles or a mother's tape measure looped on a belt. A longshoreman writes about his kid enrolling in a welding course through Harbor Light. The kid's grin is all elbows and pride. I don't post. I take a screenshot and file it. Proof outruns performance. Screens don't cure concrete, but they can point a hand toward an application form. Closure drips in like water through a joint you meant to caulk and finally did. The asset surrender confirms, stamped and witnessed. Apprenticeship stipends hit accounts and generate a little chorus of thank you emails that sound like invoices paid on time. The club's final notice arrives with the dignified sorrow of a disappointed uncle who never knew you well. Brand matters end with zeros and dates. None of it shouts. It's the steady percussion of administrative weather moving off the coast. Ava sends a monthly log at the end of her first stretch. Calls placed, forms filed, rides arranged. 3 students walk through a campus office that smells like printer dust and relief. At the top, she writes a single sentence I recognize from the 1-paragraph correction: no edits, no euphemisms. I slide the printout into the rebuild folder and write her initials on the tab because a label is a promise to keep track. We meet at the pier in the hour when the bay turns from tin to pewter and the marker lights rehearse their grammar. Gulls work their loops with practiced greed. She gives me 2 brief updates. One student placed at a boatyard where a patient foreman will teach him the vocabulary that matters. Another enrolled in a community college program for civil tech because someone explained what the word civil can mean. I tell her Louis read his first slump without wobble and passed a safety quiz he thought would trick him. We lean on the rail the way strangers do on good days. The wind does most of the talking. She asks if I'll sit in at an intake orientation next week and answer questions about what a day looks like when you build against water. Yes, I say, and then the one boundary that keeps its own company. No stage lights, just chairs and questions. She nods. Logistics and time. That's the shore where repair touches down. On Thursday, a pallet of steel arrives at the South Cove site, and the forklift frowns through the soft patch we warned about last month. We lay down plywood, angle the forks, and move on. The crew makes a small joke about the plywood unionizing. Work has its own humor, dry and exact. At lunch, Louis sits on a bucket and watches the water with the stare of someone learning how tides keep secrets until they don't. I don't tell him the life lesson hidden in it. He'll learn it when the schedule rips and he has to pour anyway. I stop by Harbor Light once more to drop off a list of dock bosses willing to mentor for an hour without turning it into a gospel. A staffer shows me a whiteboard with 43 names advancing like dates on a train schedule. Ava is on the stairs with a stack of forms and the quiet focus of a person learning a trade that doesn't need applause. She straightens a flyer on the bulletin board as she passes, not for show, just because it's wrong and she can fix a small thing today. That night, the house holds the cool of concrete that cured right. I sort the latest receipts into their tabs and label a thin new divider, steady. Outside, the bay works under dark like an old friend who doesn't need to be entertained. I write a card to tape on my plan tube, 5 words in block letters that have built more than any speech I've given. Spec, mix, place, cure. Hold. The words do not sparkle. They don't need to. A wall becomes itself by doing what those words require when nobody is watching, and especially when someone is. A family might do the same. Before bed, I set out 2 clean shirts and a sharp pencil. Tomorrow, I'll be at the pier with a circle of chairs and a stack of apprentice applications, answering questions that make better people than answers do. If she asks me to sit beside her, I'll sit 1 chair over and let air move between us like it should. Respect isn't a caption or a favor. It is the spec, the mix, and the cure time lived without shortcuts. If you rush, it fails. If you fake, it cracks. If you keep it honest, it holds. The marker lights blink their patient syllables across the channel, and the house breathes with the tide until morning. In the end, what holds isn't wealth or applause, it's conduct under load. Respect behaves like concrete, mixed with truth, placed with care, and given time to cure. Shortcuts crack, spin evaporates, character remains. Choose honest specs for your life, pour them daily, and let silence do the strengthening. If this story stirred something in you, share your thoughts below, subscribe, and stay with us for more journeys that honor real work and real grace. Thanks for being here. Your voice keeps this community strong.